Welcome to the Volvo Ocean Race headquarters. It's day 5 of leg 4, and I have with me two very special guests today. Matthew Sheahan, technical editor for Yachting World, and Juggy Clougher, who's a race winner previous in the Volvo Ocean Race. I'm going to start right off the bat with you, Juggy. What is with the headgear? Are you just feeling like you're on board one of the boats today?
It's 20 degrees outside Fahrenheit, so it's about minus 10 Celsius. I'm just getting ready to go skiing. It's early morning. And we get up around this house and we put on technical gear no matter what it's like. Just because the guys are out there, we want to feel like we're with them.
Fair enough. And we have seen ski goggles definitely out for the first time, sort of, in this leg the past couple of days. So let's get right into the racing, Matt. This leg is all about the north-south split. What are your thoughts? Which side's going to pay?
Well, it's certainly all about the north-south split, that's for sure. Which side's going to pay? That's rather difficult to say, isn't it? The guys in the north, Brunel and SCA, are looking quite good at the moment, and they're certainly worrying the pack that's down to the south. And reading all the logs and blogs off the boat this morning, there's a lot of concern with those to the south, and they're spending all their time looking at it. I'm just picking up on what's coming through, and I couldn't tell you, to be honest. I really couldn't tell you which is going to bear out.
Juggy, we have a question from one of the virtual Volvo Ocean Race skippers online. His name's Liam Kirk, and he's asking, I'll tell you specifically and then paraphrase. He says, generally, how far north of the doldrums would you say that you reach the point of no return in terms of picking your route? Do you consider there to be any use looking at historic race routes, or is the weather too volatile? Since you've done 2 races, what's your thoughts on that each time they're planning a leg, looking back?
That's a very good question. The doldrums can finger out, to a reasonable degree. One particular element about this passage through the doldrums is that they will have some sort of geographic. There are a few islands and things out there that they have to sort of sneak by as well. So they won't just be out in open passages of water. They've got to pass sort of south of Macau and down the Solomons, and so the doldrums are definitely a moving target. You have to plan your route through there. It doesn't always play out how you want it to. So it's a tough passage. This race, the way the route takes the boats around the world, there's a lot of tropical sailing. A lot of both the north-south leagues are both, sailing through the doldrums, and then they sail through the Pacific as well, up the Pacific and then back down through the Pacific. So these guys are getting a lot of practice sailing through equatorial transitions, and there's a lot of them, and there's a lot of currents involved as well. So it's not just the breeze, it's currents.
Okay, fair enough. And we've seen really close, tight boat-on-boat racing here in this leg. We've also seen, luckily, only really minor breakages. We have, as you know, Matt, from following previous races, we've had some major breakages before, and yet the Volvo Ocean 65 seemed to be holding up pretty well and pretty robust. What's your thoughts on these new boats?
Well, they're pretty impressive, aren't they? And I suppose, unfortunate though it is and was, the real acid test of just how robust these boats are when Team Vestas hit that reef. I was actually out in Italy last week having a look at the wreckage and how they're repairing the boat, and it is absolutely incredible how that boat stood up. I mean, the pictures, obviously, loads and loads of people saw those dramatic pictures of the boat with its back end missing and its innards hanging out, slapped up against a reef in the Indian Ocean, and they're quite sort of alarming pictures. It's difficult to imagine how on earth you would possibly rebuild a boat like that. But having been out there and seen it, one, not only does the team believe it is entirely possible to rebuild it, but two, in all the testing they've done of the various components, in particular the area around the keel box and the really high load area that take weeks and weeks, if not months, to build. They've done some really careful testing on there, as you would, with infrared and ultrasonic and the rest of it. And the results suggested that there was absolutely no damage there at all, which I think even surprised the experts. So if you can ram a 65-footer into a solid reef at 20 knots and still rebuild it and get it back, hopefully they will get it back into the race, or even just contemplate it, it really says an awful lot as to just how strong these boats are. And a few waves and a bang and a crash upwind, that's probably not going to cause a problem. Not when you consider what Team Vestas did to their.
Juggy, you have some personal experience with boats breaking up as well. Do you think this is a good thing that we now have essentially more robust boats, or are they losing some performance at the same time?
Well, I mean, there's no question that you want the boat to be as robust as you possibly can have it. One of the, especially even more so with the one design fleet, because the boats are racing so close, you really want your boat to stay good all the way around the planet, mechanically, structurally, because any small, hiccups, breakdowns are going to slow you right down. And in a one design fleet, that's everything. So having the boats as robust and sound as you can have them is really it's one of the keys to getting around the world, keeping your boat intact.
Well, I guess the question as well is, do you think there's a trade-off? Do we think it's that they are losing some of the race element by having the one design aspect and the robustness?
Well, the one design class, there has been a moderate reduction in the actual, the top end performance of these boats. However, the trade-off is that you get close racing. So, and this is a boat race, and the best boat will win. So the best performing boat will win the race around the world, and that's what the race is all about. That's what a race is.
Okay, so on that note, Matt, we've seen one boat, Dongfang Race Team, become a high-performing boat, a boat that was definitely a dark horse beforehand, and yet, as you've written about and as we've noticed, they've switched their navigator for this leg. What do you think, not necessarily that, but about the switching up of teams altogether that we're seeing in this Volvo Ocean Race? I mean, we have 2 teams that are fully in squads, and some other teams, only 2 of the 6 have essentially not switched sailors so far.
I think it's a very interesting point, and it's something that a number of the teams were talking about very early on before the race even started. And the whole issue of swapping and rotating crew around in the past, in the old days when you had many more crew, it was viewed with quite a lot of suspicion, to be honest. If teams were changing crew members, it usually indicated that there was a problem. Nowadays, it's very different. We're talking about very demanding boats with 8 crew on board. So basically just 2 watches. You go around the whole world 3 hours on, 3 hours off. And for most of them, it doesn't matter whether you're the navigator or the helmsman. You're not out of the watch system. You can't be. You've only got 4 people on board to handle these huge boats and powerful boats. So there's that element of it. So it's very much more demanding because you've only got 8 crew on board. Plus, the stopovers are much shorter this time around. Most of them are around 2 weeks. There's a few that are a little bit more, but mainly 2 weeks. That gives no time at all for the crew to actually recover and put on some weight and the rest of it. And in fact, that's one of the things that the teams are really worried about. They're worried about their crew members losing weight because there just isn't time to put that weight back on. Strange though it may seem to most of us who head out on a Friday night and guzzle loads of beer and carry, but it's actually quite difficult for these guys to put weight on. So the way around it is to have a bigger squad of people and to rotate the crew as you go through the race. Now, it's been a fairly light weather race, generally all the way up to China. The most the boats really saw, I think I was told, was 30 knots for a day or 2. That was it, all the way from Spain to China. So we've yet to see it get really sort of typical Volvo punishing. But the crews are all aware that when it does, they're going to need to rotate crew, and some of them are starting to do it early on.
Okay, so speaking of a crew rotation that's just happened, Juggy, we're seeing Guillermo Altadil Jr. essentially now on Montfray. And we actually just heard today that he's been injured, that he has a hand injury that they've fixed. He's fine, but he has gotten an injury. You're a bowman. You essentially had the toughest role on the Volvo boats. What do you think are the dangerous parts of being offshore and sailing? What is the hardest part? And then how do you deal with it when injuries do occur?
Well, everybody gets injured on these boats. The modern boats, the 70s and now the 65s, they're so fast and powerful. We saw injuries from the front end to the back end of the boat. Everyone got injuries. So you do have to carry your injuries a little bit like a rugby player. There's no way around it. All the crews have to be committed to being able to endure a bit of the discomfort. If you are hurt and you go out of the system, it's a huge tax on the rest of the crew. So you really Personally, you're trying very, very hard to stay in the rotation. Occasionally, someone might drop out through injury. You have to treat them, get them back online as best you can with painkillers and antibiotics, whatever you can use. And they have very well-trained medical personnel on board who, will take care of all the crewmates. If there is a situation where the guy can't possibly be functional, well, then he has to be taken out of the system. But you really just have to suck it up.
Okay, we're going to wrap it up soon. The final question for you, Matt, will be if you were to say now who you think is going to win this race, who would you put your money on?
This leg or this race overall?
This race.
Ooh.
Actually, you can answer both of those because this leg is a question mark as well.
Yeah, this leg.
Oh, you, Matt.
This leg, who do I think? Well, it is just so close between the top three. The top three being Dongfeng, Abu Dhabi, and Brunel. I think it would be between Abu Dhabi and Brunel. I wouldn't mind betting that KP. I mean, he's such a shrewd navigator. That's not to say the others aren't, but KP is quiet but extremely smart, and you never. He may go off on what looks like a bit of a corner, but you never rule him out. He's always got something else, some other plan there. So it's going to be between Abu Dhabi and Brunel, I suppose. Probably Brunel, actually. Probably Brunel for this one. And for the race overall, I mean, it's just so difficult to tell. I don't think I could honestly put a finger on any particular team. Obviously, there's those top three favourites. I suspect it's going to be between Brunel, Dongfeng, and Abu Dhabi, but we've still got a long way to go, and there's an awful lot more points available in this race. That's the other key thing.
Okay, so Juggy, for you, we've had one team that's been underperforming a little bit, and that's Montfray. They're definitely shining in this leg. Do you think we'll see them? This is the double jointed part. And how do you feel about your Newport boys on board Albi Medica? How are we going to see them doing for the rest of the race?
Well, the Albi boys are hanging in there nicely. They are still, in mid-range points. Map-free guys, Shabby's the skipper this leg, right? So it's a big role for him to take on. Both very experienced. Ika's sat out the leg. He will be certainly refreshing and watching this very closely, looking for trends and things that the other boats are doing, which they might not be doing. The next leg coming out of New Zealand is a Southern Ocean leg. That's going to be a completely different game for all the boats. All these guys are doing all this tropical sailing. All of a sudden, they're going to get thrown into a Southern Ocean leg, and that's where they're really, really going to be. It's a whole new, different style of sailing. It's an ass kicking. This leg, looking at the synopsis, the next few days, I really don't see that great an advantage to being north personally, just on a large scale, synopsis of the weather for the next 5 days. They're all sailing in good breeze right now, so you're going to find there could be quite a convergence of the boats again. They're going to get closer again, maybe. Tough call. I'm going to put my money on Brunel, but that's just a random call. I know the guys all on Brunel. I know the guys on Abu Dhabi. A couple of the guys on Dongfeng. There's no question the Dongfeng guys are sailing very, very well. There's a lot of talent on that boat. Too hard to tell. It's really hard to tell. There's a lot of transitions in this race, and you can sail one side of an island and break free. One side of a cloud, you break free. That's what it's like in equatorial sailing.
Fair enough. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us, and thank you for joining us online. Tomorrow is Valentine's Day, so we'll have a couple special surprises for both the audience and the sailors. And of course, it's been very close racing and will continue to be on leg 4. So stay tuned, and we'll see you tomorrow.